Condemn or cooperate? West African leaders are grappling with that question as they scramble for the antidote to coup contagion. Since regional bloc Ecowas decided earlier this month to play hardball with Mali's junta, tensions have spiraled far and wide. The latest, Bamako expelling France's ambassador amid a war of words over the hiring of the Russian mercenaries of Wagner right under the noses of the French and EU forces in the country to fight a jihadist insurgency. We'll ask our panel how far this will all go and whether Mali is a cautionary tale for Burkina Faso, where a high-level Ecowas mission, the second in 3 days, was meeting earlier with the leaders of last week's coup before deciding whether to slap sanctions or offer reinforcements in the fight against the same jihadists who've spread out to the so-called three borders area with Burkina Faso and Niger. And you could say that it's a bit of a vicious circle that needs breaking. Poor citizens, limited resources, weak institutions enabling traffickers, bandits, and zealots to thrive. A beleaguered army and terrified citizens revolt against leaders. But once a new strongman takes over, what does actually change? How do you truly bring law and order? Today in the France 24 debate, we're wondering if it's a case of good coup, bad coup, when you look at those two neighboring countries. Joining us from the capital of Burkina Faso, Ouagadougou, he's the former foreign minister. Ablassé Ouedraogo is president of the Le Faso Autrement opposition party. Thank you for joining us. Joining us as well here in the studio, Nyagare Bakayoko, chair of the African Security Sector Network. Thank you for being with us.
Good evening.
And we're always a pleasure to welcome political scientist Emmanuel Iga, author of The Nigeria Handbook. How are you?
Thank you. Happy New Year to you and to all.
It's January 31st. We're still allowed to say Happy New Year.
We have a little time to say.
All right. Just a few hours. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. Just when it seemed it couldn't escalate any further, after a week that saw Bamako expel Denmark's contribution to that EU expeditionary force and the French foreign minister call the junta in Mali illegitimate, leaders there responding in kind this Monday.
The French ambassador in Bamako, His Excellency Joel Mayer, has been summoned by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. During this exchange, he was told about the decision taken by the government to ask him to leave the country within 72 hours. This measure has been taken following the hostile and insulting comments made by the French Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs.
Now, the expulsion of the French ambassador Bamako follows a week of choice name-calling. The junta's refusal to let Danish peacekeepers to take part in Operation Takuba. And you had, as well, over the weekend, plenty of more name-calling by the French foreign minister, Jean-Yves Le Drian, who was pointing the finger at the Russian mercenaries of Wagner, saying Wagner is helping itself to the country's resources in exchange for protecting the junta. They are plundering Mali, what he was saying. Let me begin with you, Emmanuel Iga, and ask you your reaction to the expelling of the French ambassador.
Well, I think this is a very serious development. It kind of takes us by surprise. I never thought this kind of diplomatic incident could take place between Mali and France, actually, which are two countries that have had strong ties before, even though things have been going very rough in the past days. I never thought this kind of, let me say, diplomatic red line would be crossed. But that probably shows the level of let me say, frustration of Malian people, Malian authorities, probably about what they consider as an unfair attitude of France, towards the new regime, which is saying we are here to bring about the change, the kind of change that Mali needs, and we should be understood by the French and the international community, and that France should stop kind of using the instruments of international relations, with the Francophone organization called UMEOA, the Francophone Monetary Union, the West African Economic Community, West African states, to kind of put very stringent draconian sanctions that are actually punishing
but
the
those
Malian people.
sanctions have been put on by the West African bloc Ecowas, not by Paris.
Yes, they think they see the hands of Paris behind.
Nyagere Bakayoko, are you surprised the way Emmanuel is by the expelling of the ambassador?
No, as far as I'm concerned, I am not at all surprised, because I think that there has been a kind of deterioration of the diplomatic relations between France and Mali, but not, in fact, since the arrival to power of the civil military authorities. It began, in my view, I would say 2 years ago, when first President Macron asked in a very authoritarian way to Sahelian leaders to come to Pau. And then
in southwestern France,
into Pau, in southwestern France, exactly. And also when President Boubacar Ibrahim Keïta was then overthrown by a junta, decided not to not to agreeing with France in not entering into negotiations with jihadi groups. And since then, we have seen a number of different red lines which have been imposed by the French diplomacy beyond the negotiation. You had the date for the elections to be held. You then had this question of the coming of the private society Wagner, and we have seen that the Malian authorities each time have decided to go anyway and to continue. So I think that it is just the logical conclusion of a very, very damaged diplomatic relation.
Now, what we saw last week was the French ratchet up their rhetoric. It was first the defense minister saying, we're going to review our presence. After all, there are 4,800 French troops, not to mention the European forces. Then you had Jean-Yves Le Drian, the foreign minister, calling the junta illegitimate, now saying that effectively Wagner's already plundering the country. It's what he actually said. But now that the ambassador has been expelled, very understated. The first reaction was one just of taking stock. What will be Paris's next move?
This is a crucial question. In my view, the political diplomatic relation is so deteriorated that it is not possible anymore to keep an international French-European military presence in the country, because the military presence is just a tool which is supposed to support a political vision. And we can see that there are too many disagreements between France and Mali. So I think that none of the partners has dared to decide to stop this military partnership. But logically, there should be a decision from the French or from the Malian authorities to say, we are too many disagreements, so no, let's have the military cooperation over as well. But I don't know who will make the first step. For the time being, it is Mali, I would say.
Ablase Ouedraogo, what will be the consequences of the French ambassador being expelled from Mali?
Listen, good evening to all of us. First of all, allow me not to interfere in a sovereign decision made by the Malian government. One thing I could say is to wish that French and Malians find the good path to come over their misunderstanding and resume to a new good cooperation. This is what I would like to say. You know, in diplomacy, all could happen. The French ambassador was expelled, but who said that in a short time or in a medium period of time he will not come back to Mali? No.
But if I may, in the short term, when the junta expels the French ambassador, it's a popular move among the population. Public opinion right now is against the French.
I am not living in Mali, so it is difficult for me to give a judgment. But what I say, let us hope that Malian and French people and French government will be enough intelligent to find the good way of setting up a new cooperation which will be mutually profitable to the two countries. This is what I want to say. But don't ask me to comment any sovereign decision made by a sovereign government.
Well, let me ask you in that case to comment what Gnagale Bakayoko said, which is if something isn't done, then yeah, the French and the European forces will at some point have to pack their bags and go. Ablase Ouedraogo, we see that the jihadists don't respect borders. What would be the consequences for Burkina Faso, if any, if the French forces and the European forces left?
You are fully right posing this question. You know, insecurity right now in Sahel is a big problem. And I think that the three countries you have mentioned, meaning Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, are working very hard to find a solution to get the population live in a security system. But as I said, and as I know, the work is still underway, and let us hope that the different countries, the different government in the different countries will find the strategy, the good or the right strategy to push out the jihadists from their countries.
All right, two quick questions before we move on to that broader picture that Ablase Ouedraogo was mentioning. I'll put him to you, Gnagale Bakayoko. First of all, again, this is a war of words right now, and you have sort of two parallel universes, because on the one hand, it's a big deal, as Emmanuel was saying at the outset, the expulsion of a French ambassador in a former French colony. And on the other hand, we had, last Thursday, a communique put out by the Malians congratulating on the fact that in joint operations with the French, they had killed 100 or so insurgents earlier this month. Is there a dissonance there between, on the one hand, publicly congratulating themselves on joint operations with the French and kicking out the French ambassador?
This is exactly what I was trying to say. Today, we can see that there is a kind of gap between military operations on the one hand and political relations on the other end. And in my view, it's very difficult to differentiate both. So I don't think it could continue for a long time. We can see what happened with the Danish contingent, which was forced to leave the country, which is in fact a major failure for the French, which have been working for 2 years to set up and to put on its feet this Takuba force.
Why did the Mali junta not want those Danish peacekeepers? There's only like 95 of them. What was the problem with it?
The problem was, in fact, legal in essence, because initially, when President Ibeka was still in power, he decided that the participation of European forces to these Takuba forces would be negotiated under an agreement with France. And no, the Malians want only bilateral agreements with each participating countries. And this is what was at stake.
But the fact that there's no bilateral defense agreement between Denmark and... Isn't that a bit of a semantic exercise?
That's what I am definitely thinking, that this is the beginning of the withdrawal of international forces, because it will be very difficult for any other European countries to join.
Jean-Yves Le Drian's comment that Wagner, those Russian mercenaries, are already plundering the country? plundering Mali?
This is very difficult to demonstrate. The Malian authorities are still denying the presence of Wagner forces. Abdoulaye Diop, foreign minister of Mali, said that it is in fact the kind of accusation which were put forward by the Americans in Iraq, saying, yes, you see, we have pictures of massive weapons. So there is a strict denial both from Malian and Russian authorities. But the problem is here again the legal status of companies such as Wagner. What are exactly their links to the Kremlin and what kind of subcontract, in fact, is at stake? And this will be, in my view, very difficult
Is
to
Jean-Yves Le
demonstrate.
Drian right? Is their job to protect the regime, not to take on jihadists?
This is, once again, very difficult to say because we have lots of reports saying that the Malian army today is having a massive operation both in the center and growingly in the north of the country. And it seems that there are Russians together with them. So the idea according to which the Russians would be there only to protect the junta is also can also be a question, I would say.
Well, if I may, the minister made a very interesting observation that the expulsion of the French ambassador from Mali doesn't mean that maybe in a short time, maybe even in a few days' time, it doesn't mean the ambassador could not be going back to Bamako. It's possible. That's diplomacy. But at the same time, the other way around, things could happen the other way around too. We could have a situation whereby there's an additional escalation and the Malian authorities are recalling their ambassador in France, right? Then the gap widens. That's one point. So we have to be careful about that. The other thing that we were talking about, that's Nia Gale. Well, it's good. She's optimistic. She's not optimistic. Rather, she's not optimistic that the presence of the international forces in Bamako would be very long if things continue going this way. You know, so we are like, it's like their days are numbered in Mali if things continue going this way. Now, personally, I really don't see the international forces, whether Barkhane, Takuba, or the United Nations force, leaving Mali. The stakes on hand, the stakes in terms of the strategic importance of Mali, in terms of strategic resources that Mali has, that interests, it's of great interest to all these powers, and that's why they are going to, stick out their army in Mali, prepared to lose lives. France has actually already lost about 53 soldiers, and they are still trying to do everything to continue staying in Mali. I don't think they would want to leave. Whatever happens, France would put a bet that the junta, one way or the other, they are going to come and go. And relations between Mali and France will continue. And in any case, should they decide to pack up and go?
Let me just ask you this
if
question.
they pack up and go, they open the boulevard for Russia and Wagner.
So
which I don't think they want
just
that
very
happen.
briefly on this before we move on to Burkina Faso.
Sorry. Let me make two remarks.
Go ahead. Ouattara.
First of all, I think that the Malian request respect and consideration from France. And from what I heard, there were some insults which were not acceptable by the Malian people as well as the government of Mali. This is the first remark. The second thing, let me draw your attention on the fact that when you are responsible of the governance in your country, the first thing you have to do is to secure your people. And the way you secure your people depends on how you see things from inside. So don't ask somebody sitting outside of Mali to design a strategy or to design a political paper on which Malians should work out. So let us be careful. right now, and as I said, we are in diplomacy.
Yes, but we're
It goes
diplomacy.
like that.
But let me just ask you about this because, you know, at the outset of and we mentioned it at the beginning of the show, this drastic embargo that's been imposed by ECOWAS. There had been lots of diplomacy, lots of negotiations with the junta, and then they come up with this announcement saying, "Well, actually, we promised you we'd have elections in February, but it'll be in 4 years' time instead." And that's when it all kicked off, did it not? So can you negotiate in good faith with a junta that breaks its promise?
You know, when you have a situation, you have to find the way to get out of it. And at this moment, I think that Malians and ECOWAS responsible are working to find a solution. Because, you know, Mali needs ECOWAS and ECOWAS needs Mali. So we are brothers and sisters and we are going to live together. Me, I don't see any problem. If the problem is just for the duration of the transition, Malians and ECOWAS will find the right solution to give peaceful life to Malians. So there is no doubt about that. Let me say one thing which is important, and I would like to insist. You know, when you are in charge of a country, security is the first priority. And as you know, right now in the Sahelian countries, the situation is very bad as far as insecurity is concerned. So help the countries in the Sahelian zone to find a way out and kick out the jihadists, the terrorists from their territories.
But there again, I'll put it here to Emmanuel Liga. There's one point that can't be ignored. There was a lot of diplomacy that went on, and the decision by the junta, which hasn't really been explained, why they planned elections in February. They say for security reasons we can't have them now, but to push it back by 4 years, was that the tipping point for ECOWAS?
Yes, I think they even pushed it back by 5 years. Was it 4 years or 5 years? Anyway, five, right?
Years.
Yes.
Five and a half.
Yes, five and a half. That is excluding the 1 year or 1.5 years that have already done. So we're like going to have a military transition in place for like 6 to 7 years.
That's longer than most presidential terms.
Of course. That's that was like a tipping point because ECOWAS needed to come hard on that. So that it wouldn't become like an example that would be followed. Don't forget there was Mali and Coup, and then followed by Guinea, and they are trying to ensure that, and Burkina Faso now.
So let's talk about Burkina Faso.
They want to stop this becoming a model.
They want to stop it from becoming a model. There's plenty happening, by the way, in Burkina Faso this Monday that's been overshadowed by this expulsion. Ahead of a Thursday summit, the country, as expected, suspended from the regional body, ECOWAS, and now from the African Union. But suspended does not mean under sanctions yet. There was a high-powered delegation in Ouagadougou headed by Shirley Ayorkor Botchway, Foreign Minister of Ghana, which holds ECOWAS's rotating presidency. And she's been making positive noises, saying that the junta is very open to discussions and that it is, quote, a good sign. The discussions were very frank. They seem open to suggestions and proposals we made. For us, that is a good sign. By the way, this delegation, along with a UN delegation, was able to go and see the ousted president, which 1 week on was also seen as a positive sign. You get the sense, Negere Bakayoko, that you can't help. I know it's two different countries, but you can't help but make the contrast, make the comparison.
I think that there is a need to make comparison between the 5 coups which happened in less than 18 months.
Yeah.
The first one, and the most important one, in fact, is not located in West Africa. It is located in Central Africa, and it is Chad. Because what happened when President Idriss Déby died is that military council of transition with the son of Idriss Déby was installed to power. And this decision was against the constitutional order. But both the African Union and France decided to support this transition. And in my view, it was like opening the Pandora box, if I dare say, because it was just a few weeks after that the second coup in Mali happened.
The coup within a coup.
The coup within the coup, and then the coup in Guinea, and now the coup in Burkina Faso, notwithstanding what is also happening in Sudan, which is also very important, even if different, because in Sudan, contrary to the country I mentioned, you don't have any support from the population. But the problem is that when you are working on interest, you can be cynical and to change your mind. It's not a problem. But when you're promoting norms, standards via multilateralism, it's very difficult
But what do you make of what the initial noises made by this new junta in Ouagadougou? They've announced this Monday that they're restoring the constitution. I know they haven't said yet a timeline, but they've announced they're restoring the constitution. You hear the Ghanaian foreign minister saying that the discussions were frank, that everybody seemed open. It's very positive noises. We're not going to see sanctions against Burkina Faso.
I would say two things. First, there is a need to look at what were the intentions which were put forward after the first coup in Mali. In fact, the declarations were more or less very similar. That's the first thing. Second, the sanctions which were decided by Ecowas against Mali have been very, very badly perceived by the population, not only by the Malian population, but by all West African populations, considering that they were absolutely unfair. And now, Ecowas is, in fact, seeing at stake its own legitimacy and credibility. So I think that is one of the reasons why there is a will to find a kind of cooperation with the new junta.
Ablessé Ouedraogo, the announcement by the new junta where you are in Ouagadougou that the constitution is being restored 1 week after the coup. What's your reaction?
Okay, before I give my reaction, I wanted to make two observations. First of all, before we move from Mali, let's say that Mali is an independent country. And as such, the Malians must be able to decide for themselves. So let's trust them on what they are doing. Now, coming to my country, Burkina Faso, I must say that you have said a word. You said that the Ghanaian minister who is heading the Ecowas ministerial mission has given positive noise. I reject the word noise. This is pejorative and I don't accept it. The delegation is here to work seriously with the new power of Burkina Faso to find a way to come back on democracy. So let us be positive and appreciate the efforts ECOWAS and now the UN are doing to bring Burkina Faso on the path of democracy after this coup d'etat which happened last Monday. Let me be clear with you. You know, as a Democrat, I condemn any access to power by force. But sometimes you must accept that some civilian governments, elected governments, are, as I said, sometimes incapable, incompetent, and they don't deliver what they should do for the people. And for the case of Burkina Faso, I can tell you that it is a real deliverance for the people because the regime before the regime headed by Rochmar Christian Kabore failed to satisfy the aspirations of the population. And the population were suffering too much. I give you two or
But there were recently elections. I mean, he won the elections. So in that case, we should have lots of coups here in Europe too.
Not only in Europe, even in America, everywhere in this world. When the population is not satisfied, be sure that a solution will come up. And for Burkina Faso, when you look into the situation since last Sunday, it is very calm. Everybody appreciates what happened. It is, as I said, a deliverance for the people of Burkina Faso. But the militaries did intervene to bring a new hope. And I would like to insist on the word hope, because the population is suffering.
Emmanuel Liga, let me ask you, because since the death of Sani Abacha in your native Nigeria, that you haven't heard the sound of military music in the morning one day when you would turn on your radio, and there's plenty of second guessing of the presidents who've all come since, including the current one. Do Nigerians think, oh, let's have a coup and get rid of the, clear the swamp by having a coup?
I think what is saving the political class in Nigeria is that we've tried military regimes for a long time, probably more than 3 decades of military regime, and we didn't really get the better for it. So the thinking of most Nigerians now is that civilian regime, military regime, it's about the same thing. We won't get any better deal with the military. So I can give my own forecast that should there be a coup d'etat in Nigeria today, just like Niagale was talking about the case of Sudan, that the military don't have the support of the population, it will be something similar in Nigeria. I don't think they will get the support of the people. But the population is actually living in terrible conditions in Nigeria now. There's outcry everywhere.
Right.
Poverty, unemployment, insecurity everywhere. It's just like Nigerians, we don't have any solution. But we have this
we've tried civilians,
we have this luck that the political class has accepted that presidents may come, do their first term, do their second term for 4 years, and whatever happens, they have to go, just like in the United States. So Nigerians wait. They wait for the next elections.
They wait for the next elections.
Yeah. The next one is in 2023. It's in 2 years' time. So Nigerians that are disgruntled with the current regime are just simply like, okay, we wait. That's all.
We talked about the spiraling standoff between Mali and the international community. We talked about how right now between the West African bloc, Ecowas, and the new regime in Burkina Faso, they're talking. They're doing more than just talk, by the way. What proved the downfall of the civilian government in Ouagadougou was the outrage over insecurity, particularly in the far north, and that November slaughter of 53 gendarmes in one attack, which sparked in Inata, which you can see on this map. It sparked demonstrations at the time on the capital. On that score, before the ECOWAS delegation in town earlier in Ouagadougou, on Saturday, there was another one made up of a regional military brass. It was led by ECOWAS's Peace and Security Commissioner, General Francis Béanzin, and he told Radio France International that ECOWAS is ready. It's got, if Burkina and neighbors Mali and Niger need it, battle units at their disposal, saying in that interview with RFI that it's made up of units made available by all the member states of ECOWAS in case they need to go. And we've seen examples, of course, in the past. It was called ECOMOG, when you had them in Liberia and Sierra Leone and places like that. Okay. If the French and the Europeans leave, could there be a West African solution to taking on the jihadists?
What is very interesting is that initially in 2012, it was the solution which have been considered all the year long, but ECOWAS finally failed to set up this standby force because of logistical problems. And this is one of the reasons why the Malian authorities have called to France to intervene. So, that's true that the ECOWAS standby force, formerly known as ECOMON, has been very efficient when intervening in Liberia, in Sierra Leone. Yeah. And also, it's been forgotten, but much more recently in Bissau Guinea, in Gambia, in Côte d'Ivoire. So this force has been active, but we have to recognize the fact that ECOWAS has almost been active from a political point of view until then in the Sahel crisis. So it is a very interesting development to see that the Major Staff Committee has been deployed together with the Peace Commissioner, and I'm not sure it can be an option because it's important to remember the fact that most of the West African forces today are deployed within the MINUSMA, the UN MINUSMA in Mali.
Which is already deployed in Mali.
Exactly.
Now, of course, the difference I mentioned, the event, what was like 2-3 decades ago, was back then the major power was Nigeria.
Exactly.
But if we look, for instance, at the front cover of daily newspaper, the Daily Trust this Monday, its headline is about the attacks that took place this weekend in 4 states in the north and northwest by what are loosely called terror groups or bandits in those areas. Emmanuel Iga, Nigeria is not going to spearhead a major force when it has so many problems at home, will it?
We should recall that at a point in time, Nigeria had like about 1,000 troops in Mali. And because of the rising insecurity, about, 3 years ago, President Buhari decided to recall the 1,000 Nigerian troops. So it shows that it's a different ball game for Nigeria now. What it could do 20 years ago. It's like Nigeria practically single-handedly intervened in Sierra Leone and brought a solution to the civil war there. Then Nigeria led ECOMOG to Liberia, as you recalled, Niagara, and it's been very successful. But we are in a different period now. There's a lot of economic problems. Nigeria doesn't have that capacity financially, logistically, to project forces as it used to do 20 years ago.
Yes, and notwithstanding the fact that Nigeria is also deployed to the Lac Chad Basin, where it is fighting former Boko Haram jihadi groups.
Exactly.
May I make a comment? I think that you, sitting in Paris, sitting in Europe, you are very far from the ground. Let me root on you. You know, ECOWAS is composed of 15 countries. The countries are all equals. If there is an ECOWAS action decided by the summit, all the 15 countries has to bring their contribution. So it is not something made and left in the hand of one country. So, sure, there is a question of logistics to solve. But I say, if ECOWAS leaders are very willing to go ahead and work together to eradicate the terrorism, they will succeed.
They will succeed.
It is just a question of political goodwill.
All right, we're out of time. But I just wanted to ask one final question. I'll put it to you, Nyagare. In a parallel universe, there's a continental football tournament going on right now. Burkina Faso, there were plenty of celebrations on Sunday night after the Stallions defeated Tunisia at a place in the semifinals of the African Nations Cup. Is football just a game, or is it more than a game if Burkina get to the final?
No, I think it is more than a game, in fact, because we've seen the same thing in Mali, because today there is an emancipation, a willingness to assert its own sovereignty, its own fierce...
So a win in football would matter.
Yes, of course, because it is a way to show that Africans are also capable.
Yeah. The African Cup of Nations has always been more than football in Africa. And I would like to express my wish, since Nigeria is no more in the something, that let Burkina Faso win.
Did you hear that, Ablase?
Although my friends from Cameroon may not be happy with me, but Burkina needs that victory more than Cameroon now.
That's true.
We're going to have...
But I would like to say that when playing football among Africans, it is just to build brotherhood, to make them as one and one unique continent. It is just for young players to meet and to know each other. So it is a competition like in Europe or in somewhere else. And it helps the Africans to get to know each other better. And I would like to thank you for all the best wishes you have said for Burkina Faso and I would like to repeat it here. All depends on the political will the leaders share in our continent.
All right, that'll be our final word. Ablase Ouedraogo. Well, we wish good luck to the Stallions. We wish good luck as well to the Lions of the Teranga of Senegal. We wish good luck to everyone. I want to thank you as well, Emmanuel Iga. I want to thank Nyagade Bakayoko. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.